So first off, I've been a huge fan of your content for quite a while, and
Oh,
I've
really?
oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, for sure. I've always asked myself though, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Like, why aren't there more people like you? Why are you so rare in the trans community? Because when you look at sort of the spectrum of political leanings in general, right? Like there's a pretty even distribution, but in the trans community, you're pretty darn unique, and I've always been fascinated by that. So why do you think that is?
Well, I'm definitely not going to sit here and deny the fact that most people in the LGBT community are, at the very least, left leaning. And,
Yeah.
even further than that, most are pretty far left. However, I don't think I'm as rare as people may think. I
Okay.
think that, you know, it's sort of hard to be that person that's trying to bridge a gap between the right and the left as a trans person. And a lot of trans people, for the most part, and we're talking actual trans people, not like, you know, trendy green hair, armpit hair,
Yeah, I want to
facial
ask you about
piercings,
that
like,
stuff too.
yeah,
Yeah.
trans for attention. Actual trans people typically who transition, their goal is very much to blend into society and not raise a ruckus and just be a normal person. So right off the bat, just based on the fact that we tend to be more soft spoken, it leaves the podium open for
Hmm.
crazy people to speak for us.
Excuse me, it's ma'am. It is ma'am.
Um, and a lot of trans people are also afraid of the right. I think that a lot of them have this perception that they wouldn't have many allies there, that say they wanted to speak out against leftism or, radical gender ideology, but are they really going to have like a home on the right? But for me, I've never held a position or, I've never tried to be a part of a group. I've always just called it like I saw it. And, to me, it doesn't matter if, and this isn't the case, but it wouldn't matter if every person on the right didn't like trans people or didn't understand trans people. That has nothing to do with what positions I may hold. And I've also always been, very much of the mind that I'm not really quite sure what being trans has to do with like my perspective on foreign policy, the economy, COVID regulations. So, you know, it's there's more of me than you would think, but most of them aren't willing to really take the slings and arrows that comes with being outspoken. I think also because they see the shit that I get. I'm sorry, I don't know
Hmm.
if I should swear on here.
Oh
My bad.
no, yeah, you can swear all you
Okay.
want. I swear too.
Okay. A lot of them see the shit that I get, which is, sometimes some pretty intense hate.
Here is why we do not stand Blaire White in this household.
Blaire White. All y'all who follow her are disgusting inside and out too. Like,
And it's kind of a net negative for them to take that upon themselves, which can be frustrating for me because it sucks to feel like I'm the only one. But I mean, if I ever go, I'm constantly having, LGBT people come up to me in public and say thank you. So there's more than people think.
Yeah, I was actually curious if you get messages essentially from trans people who say, I believe what you're saying, but I'm just scared to speak up about it. I'm sure you get that.
Yeah. And quite
Yeah.
a lot of famous ones too.
Mm.
A lot of, and that's what I have to swallow my pride a little bit. And I wish they would be outspoken because if there was more of us, then, my thought process wouldn't be seen as so radical. The only reason why it seems so radical or there is this like sort of front that it's rare is because no one else is willing to really speak up. But who knows? That may change in the future.
Yeah, I think the more people like you speak up, it's just going to happen more and more. I mean, we've kind of seen that with Black Republicans, for example, or Black conservatives, just sort of more being willing to speak up, and despite the fact that in general they do catch a lot of shit from the Black community, being called names and stuff. But anyway, I was just kind of curious about that because I I come from a background, like my background is in the sciences. And so I've always approached the gender debate, if you want to call it that, from that perspective. And I always found everything that you said to just make sense to me in terms of my background in biology. And it always just kind of shocked me that more trans people didn't feel that way. And so I was curious about that because
Yeah.
it just makes sense to me. And I try to remove my sort of preconceived notions about things from the equation and give people the benefit of the doubt. But a lot of it does seem to just be kind of going with whatever the narrative of the week is or what have you. And you've always really kind of stuck to your message and not wavered in that?
I think that it's been sort of a progression to this point where the topic of, transsexuals is so far removed from the science that we once held to be just evident truths about transsexuals and the state of having gender dysphoria, et cetera. I think that once it became so heavily politicized, that's when the BS starts with anything. Same with the virus. In another world, we would have all been able to sort of unite around the fact that coronavirus is real. It's not like it's fake. I'm not one of the people who thinks it's like a huge problem at all. But in a more healthy society, we all could have been like, okay, this affects everyone, no need to politicize it.
Yeah.
But then you have the left doing lockdowns, and then obviously that's going to trigger like pro-liberty people, and then you have the masks and conflicting messages based on which state or country you live in. That's when things get messy. So the same thing has happened with trans issues, and it's unfortunate, but just like with the virus, I would like to actually get back to the point of relying on actual science. And I think that it actually serves trans people a lot better to adhere to the science and to be able to acknowledge certain things that are scientifically accurate. And, I think that taking that out of the equation actually makes it harder for people to understand us rather than easier.